The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
What's up, fight fans, and welcome into this edition of UFC Best Bets. And you are looking at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, which will be home to UFC Fight Night this weekend on ESPN+. It's a flyweight main event between Alexa Grasso and Viviane Araujo. I am Brett Okamoto, and that is Ian Parker. And we missed you last week after a week off from the UFC Best Bets, but we got a little bit of bragging to do, right? We got a little bit of bragging to do on how we did last week. Ian, why don't you talk to us and tell us? Hopefully, you were there with us and you watched this and you had some money on Ian's plays. But Ian, tell the viewers who missed it what you did on the last UFC Fight Night.
Well, look, we went 3-2-1 as one of the fights was canceled. The Jacko Allen fight, as much as I was disappointed that it didn't go the distance, Allen was part of our very fun long shot parlay. Latifi, the no neck, was a great strategy to get the win there. Castaneda, we thought he had it in the first round. Gas trying to get the finish. He blew it, but then back-to-back wins. We got plus money on the Randy Brown by decision, so we were profitable on our best bets. So that was okay, but we definitely had some fun later on.
Yes, we did. And you're being a little modest by not bringing it up right away. But go ahead and tell them, what did you do? What did you do? Why did you get done at the UFC Fight Night with Dern and John?
We've been playing these a little while now. We talked about this being fun, but we did talk last week on the show. I said, if we hit, I love that graphic, if we hit Canetti on that first fight against Randy Costa, that I was pretty confident that the rest would win. I said, Chandler, you stay away from the armbar, you win. Brendan Allen, don't stay comfortable on your back, and you win. He got put on his back, he swept, and he got the finish. And then Yan Xiaonan, we talked about the blueprint of Marina Rodriguez, same thing. And at almost 4-1, we hit our first of many long shots, but that was a heck of a payout, and I think we're gonna do it again this week. I'm pretty confident.
Yeah, to quote the great Nate Diaz, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. We were going to hit this long shot sooner or later, and you know what? It really didn't even take you that long. I feel like we only introduced the long shot parlay, like a couple months ago, and you've already hit it at a 38-1. But you're right. We're right back to it, right back to work. That's how this sport goes, and that's how we are at the UFC Best Bet. So let's take a look at this main card, a UFC Fight Night. It's on ESPN+, as I mentioned. The flyweight fight between Alexa Grasso and Viviane Araujo. That's number 5 versus number 6. Then you got Cub Swanson actually dropping down to bantamweight for this fight against Jonathan Martinez. You got Askar Askarov taking on Brandon Royval in a very important fight at 125. 5-fight main card. We're going to talk about all of these. And let's start with the main event as Alexa Grasso versus Araujo. Alexa Grasso, perfect 3-0 since moving up to 125 pounds from strawweight division. She has been favored in all 3 of those fights. She is a favorite here, again, minus 230. Against Araujo, who is 5-2 in the UFC. She's coming off a win over Andrea Lee. What do we think about this matchup between the 29-year-old and the 35-year-old Araujo?
For the division, this is a important fight. You got to see where the person goes next. Grasso believes if she gets this win, that Valentin may be next for her. She's an excellent striker. We saw in the fight against Macy Barber that takedown defense has improved. And for her, she wants to always keep this fight on the feet. Of course, as I say that, she gets a choke over JoJo Wood there. Grasso's improving all around. She does have a ground game. However, in this fight, the boxing is where she should lead and could definitely win if she's able to do that and also dictate the pace. Araujo, also a good striker, but has the ability to take this fight to the floor and turn this into kind of a sluggish grapple fest, which then for her is helpful. Then she won't drain her energy as the fight goes on. She can control it. So we might have somewhat of a kickboxing fight on her hands. However, the two of them both possess jiu-jitsu skills that are intriguing, but we both know they like to swing. That favors Grasso. Both of them are not big finishes. They have finished in the past, but for me, this fight is going to go the whole way. And, that's the way to play it, in my opinion, especially if you're going to pick a side. Because I just think the odds on Grasso are a little high. I would have liked to have seen her be no more than minus 190 in this fight.
Okay, but that's pretty specific. Minus 190, she is minus 230. And you bring up the improved wrestling defense that she showed against Macy Barber. I mean, her last 2 losses, you look at the competition, it was Carla Esparza and Tatiana Suarez. Obviously, Araujo, we don't think of her as having the ground game on a par with those 2 names that I just mentioned. But you said, you talk about it going to the decision. How much is Araujo's wrestling making you hesitate a little bit about taking Grasso?
You know, for me, just the juice is a little high. We try to really maintain that baseline, no more at minus 200. You know, because again, anything can happen in the sport, especially if it goes to the ground. For me, you know, I would play Grasso to win by decision here. You know, people bought into Grasso at minus 180, so I wasn't too far off there. That's a really strong number, minus 180. I think she is better on the feet. She throws more volume. She's just a more technical, more precise striker here. Stay off your back, and I think she keeps this standing. I don't think she's going to finish Araujo, but however, and we saw Araujo come back. Andrea Lee put her on skates in that first round. She was able to weather the storm and come back using her grappling, stayed on top and won that fight. However, I do think Grasso wins at plus 110. I'll go Grasso by decision.
Did you take a look at all at just taking the over? What is the over for this fight to go the distance? Do you know, Ian?
You know what? If you take this fight alone just to go to a decision, you're at minus 200. So, again, if you're unsure, you don't want to lay that extra $10 or $20 on Grasso, you can play the decision for anybody to win here. Just for me, I do like Grasso. And then for us to get plus odds, that's kind of where I'm leaning in this one.
Yeah. And if it goes the distance, like you said, it figures to kind of be a stand-up fight, and you do like Grasso with the technical boxing a little bit more. If it does go the full distance, chances are it's going to be Grasso who's ahead on the scorecards. Okay, let's go to 135 pounds. This is interesting, Ian, because we've seen Cub Swanson fighting for a very long time, and it's always been at featherweight. I mean, the last time this guy fought at 135 pounds, it was 17 years ago. Ian, and he is fighting Jonathan Martinez, who has won 3 straight, all by decision. Interesting fight, interesting move by Cub Swanson. What do you make of his decision to go down to bantamweight at this stage in his career, and then these odds, minus 200 for Jonathan Martinez?
You know, at first I thought maybe it was a good idea, getting a little bit of a new start, fresh energy, new opponents he hasn't seen before, coming off that Darren Elkins win. You know, his confidence is probably through the roof. He probably was sitting there going, if I'm going to get out grappled here, I'm done. But he comes out and gets a knockout. He's getting back to being confident Cub. Now, I will say at Media Day, when he didn't speak at all and had his teammate speak for him, that one threw me off a little bit. That's just not the Cub Swanson we're used to seeing. So I'm guessing he's all business here. The matchup throws me off a little bit because I think Jonathan Martinez is a very talented fighter. You know, he is someone with a wrestling background who's kind of fallen in love with the striking. We saw him winning against Davey Grant until he got knocked out, but in his last 3 fights, he's won, I believe, by decision. The boxing's gotten better. His cardio is solid. You know, for me, you got 2 guys here for the most part are durable. You know, I don't see anyone winning here by submission. I actually have Cub Swanson wanting to throw off Martinez. You put Martinez on his back because I don't think he's a threat. But I'm going to kind of flip the switch a little bit here. I'm not going to take a side. I'm going to play over 2.5 rounds in this fight. You know, for me, Jonathan Martinez, this goes back to what we talked about with Alexa Grasso. If that number was a little bit lower, I would go in that direction. But being that this is probably going to be a striking fight, Cub is dangerous.
Is there anything that you might see on the scale from Cub that would make you change this pick, or whether he looks good or bad, we're taking the over either way?
You know, Brett, you and I have been watching this sport long enough. We've seen people come out looking like Skeletor, and then they jump in the cage the next day and they put on the performance of a lifetime. Unless you see something of like an Aspen Ladd who's sitting there shaking, you know, I just don't see that happening with Cub. You see the fight here with this one of the craziest fights of all time, and you know, I don't know. I'm not too worried about him. He's a professional. I don't see the weight being that much of a situation. I don't think we've heard anything. I think if you would have heard something, you probably would have said something by now. I do think this is a tough fight. Martinez is good on the way up for a first fight coming down. But hey, if Cub gets the win, that's a big step in the right direction in the new weight class. But for me, I'm going over 2.5 rounds. I think Cub is going to be a little hesitant, doesn't want to get finished. And Martinez is going to be worried. He knows Cub is dangerous. He might wrestle in this one.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Okay, let's go to 125 pounds. This is actually a pretty important fight for the division. Askar Askarov taking on Brandon Royval. You got Askarov, who's had his 3-fight win streak snapped in pretty dramatic fashion against Kai Kara France. That was a big win for Kai Kara France. That was back in March. And then you got Royval. He's back on track. He lost 2 to Brandon Moreno and Pantoja, but now he's on a 2-fight win streak. Does he keep it going here as a plus 200 underdog, or do we like Askarov to get back on the win column?
Look, when you're talking about Brandon Royval, you are talking about must-see TV, win or lose. You and I watched him live at one of those last pay-per-views, and this is a guy who comes out and he just goes for it. It's kill or be killed. He's not afraid to go on his back. He likes the submission game. He's very creative. He's never out of the fight, even when you think he's out of the fight. However, I think out of all the fights in the top 5, this is probably the worst matchup for him. He fought a guy in Matt Schnell. We've seen Schnell make mistakes pretty often outside of having that insane comeback in his last fight. Askarov is another human backpack. This is a guy who doesn't make mistakes. He uses the striking to set up the ground game. And this is where Royval's willingness to play off his back, I think, is going to be a dangerous situation here. Askarov has never been finished in his career. As good as Royval is, I don't see that happening now. I just think Askarov's forward pressure with the wrestling game, his grappling, is going to be too much. I understand why the odds are where they're at. If I was Royval, I would try to actually keep this fight standing if he can. Don't be so confident in your jiu-jitsu, because this is a guy who just doesn't get subbed.
Yeah, I think that's a really good breakdown. Royval, that's what makes him so entertaining, is because he has that confidence in his jiu-jitsu, but Askarov, a tough guy to go down to the floor with and try to have any success. Okay, let's go to the middleweight division. Dusko to Tortovich versus Jordan Wright. To Tortovich, 2-3 in the UFC. He's been finished in the first round twice in the UFC, and that does not bode well with Jordan Wright, who has only gone out of the first round once in his career, and that was a fight that ended in the second round. But it has not gone his way the last 2. He's actually been finished in the first round himself in back-to-back fights. What do we think of this middleweight matchup, Ian?
You know what? For me, Dusko Todorovic has all the skill set to be a successful fighter in the UFC. Just sometimes he forgets what's gotten him there. This guy is an excellent wrestler, great grappler, very solid jiu-jitsu. He just, when he gets too involved in the firefight, he trusts his hands too much. And we saw against Chidi Nokiani, he got knocked out. He's fighting a guy in Jordan Wright, who is a one-punch power type of knockout. This is a guy who had Bruno Silva on skates, and he got knocked out. For Dusko Todorovic, there is a very clear path to victory here. Yes, he's probably the better striker, but Wright is a tough fighter. If I'm Todorovic, I wrestle. I use that ground game. You have a huge advantage on the ground there. Wright will literally have no answers off his back. I think Todorovic gets this done inside the distance. I think he gets it done pretty easily. I think at this point in his career, he's still young, so he can learn from his mistakes, but he has to throw the ego to the side. Stop worrying about the knockout. Use what got you there and put this man on his back and get the win.
Yeah, maybe you'll get to this on your best bets, but I'm not sure if this is a best bet for you or not. But what do you think the line should be? You mentioned that earlier when we were talking about the main event. This is a minus 210 here, and maybe because of, you see the record for Todorovic is 2-3, but you're seeing a very clear path to victory. Do you think there's a lot of value here even at minus 210?
I do see value here. Again, I just try to stick to my word with the minus 200. I don't want to be hypocritical with that. If people don't mind laying that extra money, I do think Todorovic gets the win here. Jordan Wright has showed toughness. He showed that he can strike, that he has power. But in his last fight, he got guillotined by Marc-Andre Barriol, and he got knocked out the fight before that. Also, how many times can you get finished in a row before you just kind of lose who you are and what got you here as well? So for me, Todorovic has had success in the UFC more than Wright. He's got more ways to win. If you want to lay that, it doesn't bother me.
Okay, let's round out the main card here at 205. You got Misha Sorkinoff taking on Alonzo Menifield. Sorkinoff, once upon a time, man, this guy was a hot prospect. He's now 35. He's coming off 3 straight losses, taking on Alonzo Menifield, who is kind of quietly 3-1 in his last 4. He came off the Contender Series in 2018, had a little bit of up and down, but he's a minus 220 favorite here. He wins this. He's won 4 of his last 5. Does he get the win here against Misha Sorkinoff?
You know what? People are going to probably sit here and look at this 2 ways. One, does Menifield just put this guy out in the first round? We've seen Sorkinoff get knocked out. He's very hittable. He doesn't disguise his takedowns too much. He's got the ground advantage. And then when the fight against William Knight, Menifield kind of got out-grappled by a guy who has nowhere near the jiu-jitsu and grappling of Sorkinoff. However, with his team, Saif Saud, I believe that Menifield has to know what's coming here. He's got to see that Sorkinoff is going to throw an overhand right. He's going to try and shoot in, put this guy on his back, and use his jiu-jitsu skills. But I don't think he disguised it that well. I think Sorkinoff is kind of just riding out the contract, trying to fulfill it. For me, this is either he gets the sub or Menifield gets the knockout. That's why we're going to play this a little bit of a different way as well. I think I found value in the fight not starting in round 3. We're getting that under that minus 200 number. I don't see this fight going the distance at all. I'd be shocked if it goes past round 1. And if you do want to take a side, I lean Menifield. I think the athleticism there, he'll be able to keep the fight standing and get the knockout win.
Okay, so we're taking an under there on minus 190 for it to start, not to start on round 3. Okay, we're going to run through the prelims like we always do, but before we get to that, we're going to look at a featured prelim. That is the bantamweight fight between Martinez and Brandon Davis. This is Davis' second run in the UFC. He has not fought since last October, so he's coming off a little bit of a layoff. Martinez, 26 years old. He is 1-1 so far in the octagon. What do you think of the featured prelim, Ian?
You know what? For me, this is an opportunity for Martinez to really shine. Brandon Davis is a guy who's going to come forward. He's a cardio guy. Apparently, he runs like 100 miles a day or whatever it is, which I don't know how that really necessarily helped. To me, that would give you tired legs. I don't think he's better anywhere in this fight other than maybe being able to keep a pretty nasty pace. Martinez has showed cardio, toughness in that last fight where he was being dominated. He almost got a triangle. He also dropped the guy in the 3rd round. So for me, I think Martinez, wherever he wants his fight, even if he's on his back, he's got good jiu-jitsu. He's active. He can get sweeps by using other positioning. I like Martinez here. I am surprised that Davis is back so soon, to be honest, after a layoff. Usually guys get 3 or 4 wins while being active. I guess they really needed someone to fill the card. Not a bad fighter. Again, very tough, good cardio, but Martinez has the tools here. I think he's a solid prospect. Let's go with Martinez.
Yeah, very, very important fight for both guys. As I mentioned, this is Davis' second run with the UFC, and Martinez. You want to stay on the plus side of even record, 1-1 right now in the UFC. Okay, let's run through the rest of the prelims before we get to the best bets in the parlay. What do you got for the rest of the prelims?
All right, well, the first one we just discussed. Let's go Martinez at minus 155. I like those numbers there. Victor Henry looked unbelievable against Hani Barcelos. He is taking on veteran Rafael Assunção. I think Henry gets this done. If you want to take a shot and get these odds down, take Henry inside the distance. He has a lot of finishes, really mixes it up well. You know what? This fight against Malkoun and Maximov, I'm going to be honest here. This is going to be a grapple fest. It just depends on who gets top position. I think Maximov has the better wrestling. Brito versus Alexander. I'm going Brito here by some sort of violence of KO or TKO. Rodriguez, Sam Hughes. Rodriguez looked okay against Kay Hansen. I really like Sam Hughes, the fight in her. She's been an underdog. She's won her last 2. I actually think she's the better grappler in the situation, so we're going to go with dog money there. Tyra versus Cj Vergara. The fight to not go the distance. And Mike Jackson, yes, the infamous Mike Jackson against Pete Rodriguez. Look, minus 650 is a crazy number. I'll just spill the beans. Rodriguez will be in the parlay. Jackson, unless he gets a lucky DQ, is not winning this fight.
Yeah, Mike Jackson sighting. It's been a little bit since we saw Mike Jackson. And how about 4 plus money picks on the prelims? I love that, Ian. And how about your parlay? Let's take a look at that.
All right, let's go with Victor Henry. This is a guy who took a long time to get into the UFC, and he made that debut count against Barcelos. I think he shines even brighter, so he's going to be the first one there. Maxwell Malkoun, I think this fight's going the distance. Pure grapple fest for 3 rounds. Give me Brito, and let's go Rodriguez over Mike Jackson. And look, if somehow Mike Jackson gets this win, put respect on that guy's name, but I don't see it happening. So at plus 158, that's going to be the parlay for this week.
All right, plus 158 for the parlay. Let's get to the best bets. What do you got?
All right, let's start off. Main event, I am going to go with Alexa Grasso by decision. I love that plus 110 number. I think it's a standing. I think she's got the better cardio. Let's go with Grasso at those plus numbers. Another prop at plus numbers, Askar Askarov by decision. Brandon Royval is just too hard to put away, and Askarov just wants to get the win here. I like that one. We are going to go Dusko Todorovic inside the distance. This is a must-win for both men. However, more tools, the ground game. Pray to God he just doesn't get into a brawl. Sorkinoff Menifield fight to not start round 3. Brett, you know me way too well at this point. You called it there. I don't see this fight even going past round 1. I am shocked it's only minus 190. We're going to go with Martinez. I think Brandon Davis, a year off and a second stint with a guy who is just kind of getting himself comfortable in the UFC. We're going to go there at minus 155.
All right, a lot of best bet action on the main card. You know, sometimes you sprinkle it up and down the card, but this one, you have a lot of action on that main card on ESPN Plus. Okay, let's get to, you know, usually I say it's the fun part of the show, but it's actually the most profitable part of the show now after hitting plus 38 to 1 on the last card. What are we doing with the long shot parlay here?
No pressure, right? If we go 2 in a row on this one, we may have to change the name of the show. Dusko Todorovic by KO or TKO at plus 100. Even if he gets mount, he can finish it that way. Maximov money line. I think he's the better wrestler. I think he's got more ways to win on the ground. I like him. We talked about Sam Hughes. I think she's fought better level competition. Pierre Rodriguez, you know, had to really fight hard in that third round to beat Kay Hansen. Hughes has fought better competition, and I think she's got more ways to win. And Tatsuro Tyra, look, the reason why this is plus 350, Cj Vergara is a dog. The guy will come forward. However, we have seen him put himself in pretty bad position before. I think Tyra is a very solid prospect at submission. And Brett, look at that magical number, back to plus 37.88. So I'm going for that magical number of almost 38 to 1 here. Let's get it 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, you love to see it. $10 bet winning $378. I mean, we're not going to hit it every week, but again, we've only been doing it for a little bit, and it already hit at 38 to 1, which is pretty remarkable. So, Ian, great job breaking down the card. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Enjoy the fight card on UFC Fight Night, ESPN Plus this weekend. And, of course, we will be right back. UFC 280 is right around the corner. I'm going to love breaking that one down next week with Ian Parker. Make sure you tune in for that. Goodbye.